So in the previous lecture, we looked at stability considerations and we discussed the 1D heat diffusion equation. So the 1D heat diffusion equation that we considered, we differentiate using forward spacing in or forward differencing in time, central differencing in space, and it was differenced in an explicit manner. And we showed that using the von Neumann stability analysis, that this parameter r, which is alpha delta t by delta x square, it has to be less than or equal to 1 by 2 for stable solutions. So let me now show you a few more examples of where the von Neumann stability analysis can be used to decide or to comment on the stability of different linear equations. So let's look at the simple implicit scheme for the heat diffusion equation. So the implicit scheme for the heat diffusion equation would actually give us Ti n plus 1 minus Ti at n by delta t to be equal to alpha by delta x square Ti plus 1 n plus 1 minus 2 Ti n plus 1 plus Ti minus 1 n plus 1. And now note that we can now write again that n, the numerical solution is the most accurate solution plus an error term, and the d part, which is the accurate or solution obtained by a computer of infinite accuracy, this d part will actually again cancel on both sides in the equation. So finally what we will have will be an equation for the errors itself. So what we have is epsilon I n plus 1 minus epsilon I n would be alpha delta t by delta x square into epsilon I plus 1 n plus 1 minus 2 epsilon I n plus 1 plus epsilon I minus 1 n plus 1. Now at this point we can again write or use the method of, or write the error in terms of Fourier modes. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to represent epsilon I n again in terms of Vn e to the power I kx I delta x, where capital I is iota, and what I'll also use is that I will say kx into delta x is, let's say, theta. So now what we get will be Vn plus 1 e I theta minus Vn e I theta to be equal to r Vn plus 1 into e I of I plus 1 theta minus 2 e I theta plus e I minus 1 theta, where I've taken out Vn plus 1 because that would be a common factor on the right hand side. And now I can take this one factor here on the right hand side, and then we can simplify. And what I'll do is I'll also divide both sides. Let me say this. You can say I can multiply both sides by e minus I theta. So if I multiply both sides by this number, what we will get will be Vn plus 1 will be equal to Vn plus r Vn plus 1. Now we'll have e I theta minus 2 plus e minus I theta. Now the thing to note here is that e to the power I theta plus e to the power minus I theta can be written as 2 times cosine of theta. So we'll have the right hand side to be Vn plus r Vn plus 1. We'll have 2 cosine theta minus 2. And now let me take this part to the left hand side. So what we'll get will be Vn plus 1, which will be a common factor. I'll have 1 plus 2r 1 minus cosine theta to be equal to Vn. Now 1 minus cosine theta can be written as 2 sine square theta by 2. So I can write Vn plus 1 plus 2r into 2 sine square theta by 2 to be equal to Vn, which means Vn plus 1 by Vn, which I wrote as the amplification factor G, will be equal to 1 by 1 plus 4r sine square theta by 2. Now what did we say for stability? We said for stability we want the modulus of G to be less than or equal to 1. Modulus of G, because again G can be either negative or it could be a complex number. So we are taking both considerations here. So modulus of G should be less than or equal to 1, which means in our case now G is actually a real number. So we are saying 1 by 1 plus 4r square r sine square theta by 2 should be less than or equal to 1. This is what we would actually want to get a stable solution. We should note now that this number sine square theta by 2 is actually a number which is positive, r is also positive, and 4 is, of course, you're multiplying by a positive number, so the denominator itself is more than 1. So this inequality is always satisfied irrespective of the value of r and for all theta. So this is always satisfied for all r and theta. So the scheme, we can say, is unconditionally stable. On the other hand, the explicit scheme that we looked at in the last lecture was actually conditionally stable because it required r to be less than or equal to 1 by 2. Now let me take another example of stability and let's look at the wave equation. So let's consider the first order wave equation, which is given by this equation where c is a parameter which is a constant and is greater than 0. So we have a first order wave equation that we will use to understand the stability requirements of this problem. Let's say we discretize this equation using forward time and central space differencing scheme. What it means is I can write ui n plus 1 minus ui n by delta t, that would become the time differencing plus, or the time derivative, plus c, and as I said, this is central differencing or central differencing in space, so we'll use c into ui plus 1, and let's say we are doing an explicit differencing, so we write it at n minus ui minus 1 at n by 2 delta x to be equal to 0, which now means ui n plus 1 would be ui n minus c delta t by 2 delta x ui plus 1 n minus ui minus 1 n. So now we want to discuss or infer the stability requirements or the stability or the criteria which will ensure stable solutions for this discretization. So we again use error analysis, and this time we can use it in the same manner. So I'm not going to worry about the intermediate step of writing it in terms of d and epsilon. I will just go straight to epsilon, and knowing that epsilon would be written in the following way, that the left hand side will be Vn plus 1 e to the power I kx delta x, that would be equal to Vn e to the power I kx into delta x minus c delta t by 2 delta x. Then we'll have Vn e to the power I plus 1 kx delta x minus Vn e to the power I I minus 1 kx delta x. Now let me choose again kx delta x because that is going to appear everywhere. Let me say this is the variable theta. So we will write Vn plus 1, and noting that we'll have this factor. If I can highlight this here, this whole factor here would actually appear on both sides. So this is there, this is here, right? And it would also be, some parts are also here and here. So I'm going to try and cancel out these factors now. So we'll have Vn plus 1 to be equal to Vn minus c delta t by 2 delta x. Vn will be a common factor. We'll have e to the power I theta minus e to the power minus I theta. Now we can take this a few more steps further. So we'll have c delta t by c 2 delta x. Vn. Now note that e to the power I theta minus e to the power minus I theta is actually 2I sine theta. So we'll use that. This 2 will cancel from here. Right, so this goes away. And what we are left with is now Vn 1 minus c delta t by delta x times iota sine of theta. And so the amplification factor G, which is equal to Vn plus 1 by Vn, will be 1 minus iota c delta t by delta x sine of theta. Now to decide on whether this scheme is stable or not, let's look at the modulus of G. This will be 1 plus c delta t by delta x square sine square theta square root. You can see that sine square theta is anyway again a positive number. C delta t by delta x, c being a positive number, delta t, delta x are also positive numbers. That means that this number itself is actually more than 0. So 1 plus something which is a positive number will actually always be more than 1. The square root of that would be more than 1. So we have this number to be greater than or equal to 1 for all theta. And so I can say that this scheme is unconditionally unstable. That is, it is unstable for any selection of delta t or delta x. So that was the explicit forward time central differencing scheme in terms of space for the first order wave equation. Now let's look at a modification proposed by Lax, where the scheme was actually rendered stable for a certain set of or a selection of delta t and delta x. So the modification was that we could write remember the left hand side in the earlier differencing was actually this, there was a ui in here. So what Lax suggested that this could be used as a geometric average of values at I plus 1 and I minus 1. So the modification is, we write the right hand side now as ui plus 1 plus ui minus 1 n by 2, that is the average which has sort of replaced uin, minus c delta t by 2 delta x ui plus 1 n minus ui minus 1 n. Now let's see what do we gain by making this modification. So if we go to the next step now, we can write Vn plus 1 e to the power I theta will be, this first term will give me Vn by 2. We'll have an e I plus 1 theta plus e I minus 1 theta minus the next term will be c delta t by 2 delta x into Vn e I plus 1 theta minus e I I minus 1 theta. So let's simplify. I can divide both sides by e to the power I theta. So we'll have Vn plus 1 to be equal to Vn by 2. In the brackets we'll have e I theta plus e minus I theta minus c delta t by 2 delta x. Vn will now have e I theta minus e minus I theta. Note that this does not change because we've still used the same differencing. It's just that this side is actually being changed by this modification. Now what will we get? We'll get this as Vn by 2 e I theta plus e minus I theta is actually 2 cosine theta. So we get 2 cosine theta here minus c delta t by 2 delta x Vn, and this will be 2i sine theta. So let's cancel out some common factors here. So this 2 cancels here, this 2 cancels there, and so we can now write Vn plus 1 by Vn, which is the amplification factor, will be cosine theta minus I c delta t by delta x sine of theta. So this is the amplification factor for this scheme. Now let's look at modulus g, and it's as good as saying that I can also look for modulus g square. It's one of the same thing. So let's look at modulus g square, this just because it makes it easier to make a point here. So modulus g square will be cosine square theta plus c delta t by delta x square sine square theta. Now let me replace this number c delta t by delta x by a number xi, which I'm going to call as which is actually known as a Courant number. Note that c is actually velocity or has units of velocity. So now what we get is modulus g square to be equal to cosine square theta plus xi square sine square theta. Now for stability we want modulus g to be less than equal to 1, which means modulus g square is also less than equal to 1. So for stability we want this to be less than equal to 1. Now what that would mean is that if this is less than equal to 1, we can write xi square sine square theta to be less than equal to 1 minus cosine square theta, which is equal to sine square theta. And now sine square theta being a positive number, I can actually cancel it on both sides, but it would not change the inequality. So we'll have xi square sine square theta less than equal to sine square theta, which means xi square is less than equal to 1, which means xi has to be less than equal to 1, and we don't worry about the negative xi because c is positive, delta t comma delta x are also positive numbers. So this means c delta t by delta x has to be less than equal to 1, which is the well-known stability requirement and is called as the Courant-Friedrichs-Lewy or the CFL condition.